Hello, my friends. It is the Friday episode of Stand Up, which tends to be posted a little later or usually sometime Friday morning because I'm out late partying with y'all every Thursday night since March of 2020, since basically lockdown during the pandemic began. I've been hosting this hangout, not every single Thursday, but most, right? And we had a great time last night, 2.5 hours, over 50 people there, almost 60 at one point, I think. And folks stayed. They stayed. They hung out. We had some really very thoughtful discussions about current events, and people shared their thoughts on several different issues and experiences in their lives and talked about some important things like the struggle that our friend Aaron and Kevin have had with their farms. We talked a lot about farming and the business of it and why capitalism has destroyed it in almost every way. So great conversations, lots of laughs as well. Whole bunch of new people, whole bunch of voices. It was great to see y'all at last night's hangout. And guess what? I recorded it and figured out how to record it up on the cloud. Only been using Zoom 3 years. I've only gotten this right one time. But if you are a paid subscriber and you weren't at the Zoom, or even if you were and you want to relive it, you can now watch it. I'll include a link to it in today's show notes. If you have any issues, let me know in the comments. But if you want to go watch it and relive last night's hangout, it's definitely worth it. A lot of people said a lot of good things, and we had a lot of laughs. And you're never alone if you're a member of the stand-up community, is what I like to believe. So Ty wasn't there. You get to relive it. We taped it for you, buddy. And join us next Thursday and the following ones. Awesome conversation with JL Cauvin today. I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy, as always. Interestingly enough, to me, I think the people who aren't professional paid pundits on politics and culture and life are some of my favorites to talk to here on the show. I mean, I guess they semi-are. Christian Finnegan and Maura Quint and JL Cauvin, and of course our friend Bill Boyle. But I just love those voices in many ways the most when it comes to so many of the issues that we're seeing unfold. I like the way that they frame them and give context, and obviously humor is always a plus. And JL Cauvin provides all of that every time we talk to him. He wanted me to let you know that he is promoting his cameos. He's got to get a certain amount of cameos this month, and he's knocked them down 75%. He's done thousands of these videos for people. Everybody's a happy customer. He does so many impressions. It's a great, fun gift. So hire JL to do your cameo. You can support him on Patreon. He has two great podcasts, and his new podcast, you know, Trumpcast, but his new podcast, Rain on Your Parade, is excellent. JL and I started our conversation recapping the end of his tour and how he met a whole bunch of stand-up listeners at his shows and how much that meant to him. We then, of course, talked about the Republican debate the other night. He was very insightful, I think, on that. Commentary on that probably more better than almost anybody I've heard. And also, of course, talked about the new speaker, Mike Johnson, and Joe Biden. He had a lot to say about Joe Biden, his presidency, and what concerns him about the future. Great conversation, as it always is. Follow him on social media. Support all of his work. He's a really great guy with great moral character, even though he says dirty things sometimes. Ladies and gentlemen, JL Cauvin. And I last saw him in Pittsburgh, where we sold out the City Winery. People were outside in Pittsburgh on a Wednesday night clamoring to get in. But what a show. It was great. It was good to see you. Hi.
No, it was, I mean, it was the energy in that room and the mob of fans that, like, getting on a midnight train to Chicago right after the show was, I was like floating on air, you know, normally you'd think, oh man, that's kind of a trek and, you know, dreary, but I was like, no, it's pretty awesome. So
why don't you tell everybody, just as I dropped you off at the train at midnight there in Pittsburgh at the Amtrak station where you, went overnight to Chicago. And as you were getting out of my tiny car, which is always funny, do you recall what I did to you? I filled your pocket.
Oh, you tried to give me Good and Plenty?
That's right.
The worst, in my estimation, the worst candy on God's green earth.
Don't think I tried. I think I put a whole handful in your jacket pocket.
Well, you know, as you may know, whenever you get to a train station anywhere in an urban area at midnight or later, you usually have to blow somebody just for safety. And so it was good because I was able to offer them Good and Plenty. instead.
Oh, I'm glad you were adapted and were resourceful with my practical joke.
Yes. And then I didn't get a good picture of the man standing outside who looked just like, I believe it was Thurgood Marshall. I tried to get like a surreptitious photo, but it didn't work. So it was just blurry. So it didn't work. But yeah, it was a great time traveling the country. Desiree, of course, brought out her whole squad.
That's so great. Thank you, Desiree, longtime listener, supporter of my show and your work as well. Yeah,
she brought out her husband, so that was a real cock block. But
he is such an amazing. He is everything. I'm trying to find his weaknesses, but he's a firefighter. He's a pilot. He can build anything. He's a great dad.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. They didn't bring the kids to the show.
I know about it. He's a good dad.
No, real fans would have brought the kids. Every ticket sale counts. But she brought a very large squad, which was wonderful. I think much like Sex and the City, maybe there were complaints that there wasn't enough diversity in her hot mom squad last time. So there was a hot Latin woman was added to it. So that was nice. I thought that's listening to the fans.
I think she has run with a diverse crew throughout because she was in the Air Force. I don't know where she grew up, but she's got a pretty diverse crew, I think. Yeah. Well,
what I will say in all seriousness is talking to her and her husband after the show was legitimately more enjoyable than the show. And I'm obviously think highly of my own stand-up, but they had some very funny stories, which I haven't shared because given her husband, let's just leave it at this. He should maybe be a guest one day. He is a firefighter in Beverly Hills. And so you get, you get some celebrity calls and you could really write a funny memoir that could be adapted into a Netflix show. I'm just saying, Desiree, if you're out there, I'll settle for an executive producer credit. I'm sure Pete will as well.
Well, it better be good because he won't be reporting back to the firehouse after he does a tell-all on the celebrities who have shat their pants.
Yeah, that's 2 minutes into the 20th. As soon as that pension vests is when we go to the publisher.
No, if you want to know what celebrities' homes have been called because they were like sitting in their own garbage, then
I mean, I don't know if you know, and you're just sort of dancing
I've
around.
I've heard some names
because you offered a very specific incident, like a type of incident, which is also what I heard.
Certainly nobody's name rhymes with Schmilton Hurl. But no, I just made that up. I'm going to edit the whole thing out because it's just no good for anybody.
No, we haven't said anything. We have said nothing.
He would never. He's actually, the other thing is the guy's got, moral code and integrity. So he's actually not said anybody's names. He's just said, you can imagine there are certain high profile people whose homes we've had to respond to in Beverly Hills. And that can be tough. He's very thoughtful.
Yes, yes. But it was a very fun. The show was fun. The after show was funner, if that's a word. And
you also met Amanda, I think, who's a longtime listener. And I don't know. I feel like there were some others as well out there. But
yeah, no, I mean, it's a bittersweet thing. And you realize I've often said your fan base and this other podcast, The Black Guy Who Tips, those two fan bases are, I think I have attracted many good fans, but a lot of sort of passive internet.
The stand-up community is quality, and we consider you part of. We consider you literally part of the community. I think that's like seeing.
I hope a high-level Patreon subscription would at least get me that. I'm not sure
everybody knows that. I mean, it's not too virtuous to mention it. But I should say you also got recognized as
at the Venetian. At the Venetian, when I was going to the U2 concert, they didn't need me to open for them, unfortunately, so that was kind of a wasted trip.
Did you ask Bono if you could?
Yeah, and he just started spouting things that sounded vaguely like poetry, but also like, what are we talking about here? And Edge rolled his eyes and just left the room. He was like, not again. So a fan of yours whose name escapes me, sadly. We're walking up, we're in the U2 exhibit in the Venetian, and he goes, "Hey, a celebrity sighting." And I go, "Hey." And he then said, I like your comedy and from the podcast. What's the podcast? And I said, Rain on Your Parade, Making Podcasts Great Again, naming my two podcasts. And he just went, no, neither of those. And he said, Stand Up with Pete. And I said, oh, okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, I feel sort of like the Tom Hagen of the Pete Dominic comedy family, where it's like, yes, I'm a member of the family, but they always have to mention my last name whenever they talk. They're like, oh, this is my brother Tom Hagen. Just in case you didn't think I was an original fan of yours, it's all through Michael Pete Dominic Corleone.
Yeah, I think there's a real flaw in your metaphor. The idea that you'd be my consigliere is not a thing. I think that.
Eric Siegel. Let's do this, actually. Eric Siegel is your Tom Hagen, I think.
More likely, yeah.
Michael Cohen, I think right now is more your Sonny Corleone. He used to be a little bit. He used to be a little bit more. I don't know, just sort of calm member of the. Now he's sort of at.
Yeah.
He's at Sonny level right now. Understandably.
Did you listen to that 82-minute conversation?
Because I am also a member of his Substack.
Oh, good.
Okay. I don't just freeload. I embrace the community fully.
Great.
And I like his writing, and I like him when he's a guest on the show.
Great.
I'm sure he's a Patreon member of mine and reads all my stuff as well. But no, okay, I'm out of who. I guess who is Connie? Who's Talia Shire in this analogy? Who's a high ranking? Anyway, this is already off the rails. We peaked at.
I can't do that. I can't.
Sonny Cohen.
I can't even.
We peaked at Sonny Cohen.
It's the wrong place for this kind of movie metaphor, but I could listen to it forever if you guys all wanted to discuss and cast. By all means, go after it. There's obviously several current event-y issues that I want to talk about. You're one of my favorite pundits. Somebody emailed me last time you were on too. It's like. You and Christian Finnegan and Mara Quint, especially, and Bill Boyle, more than the kind of professionals, like the people that I really like to ask about their framing of things. And obviously, you often make it very funny. So I want to ask you about first the new Speaker of the House before we get to the debate and the outcome of Tuesday night's elections. I haven't talked to you since Mike Jones was nominated and finally elected Speaker of the House, and I wanted to get your thoughts because I know,
Johnson.
Huh? Mike Johnson. It's that name is just so bland and common. Everybody's making jokes about that. But what are your thoughts on this guy? Have you taken? What do you think about his app where he's holding his son and his son is holding him accountable for their porn viewing? That seems pretty extreme, JL.
A fan of mine who is sort of politically connected type of person who I met in D.C. He had written that because he's from Tennessee. He had written that. It's more common in the evangelical community than this kind of thing. Even though it is freaky and weird, it's not going to be thought of as weird, maybe to his base.
Yeah, because everybody knows about like the Promise Keeper stuff, but the idea of accountability is.
I'm more of an oath keeper myself.
That's right. But are they saying that it's not uncommon for a son and a father to be?
I think. My thought is, if you're a man of faith, you roll the dice every time you look at porn because somebody up there is watching. So
right.
The idea of if you were a person of faith, you just sort of say, God, look the other way, or deceased relatives, just take this day off. You don't have to look over me during every moment of the day. Whereas I feel like this is one of those sort of, but in case the wrath of the Lord is not enough, my kid is also watching. And you'd think, if you're God in that situation, don't you sort of say, I need a cosign on this from your child? My judgment is enough, Mike Johnson. Okay. Little Junior knowing your porn also. And also, I got to be honest, even though we have pretty hard rules up here in heaven, your kid, we can look, you're a grown man. Your kid being checked in, let him have some development before we start, totally creeping him out. Let him have a little freedom.
I think we should just make porn a lot more difficult to access because, when we were growing up, I think it built character when you got creative where you would find a thing, right? I
have a bit on, I believe it's my third album, Too Big to Fail, where I discuss buying my first porn magazine at 19. And the fact is, I wanted to look at porn a lot earlier, but because it wasn't accessible and private, I had to make a commitment that one day I would have to have the fortitude to walk up to a stern looking man from Pakistan, hand him $6 for a Playboy, and accept that this is the cost of doing business. This, both the $6 and the look of judgment and the feeling of some shame of purchasing that in broad daylight from a newsstand. But I had reached a level where I was like, no, now it's worth it to me.
Right.
Now I've climbed that mountain. And it felt so much better knowing that I had made that decision as an adult versus if as soon as you get curious these days, kids can sort of look at it. And I'm sure it's warping a lot of kids in terms of their thoughts about sex and their thoughts about
I understand holding your kids' access to the internet accountable. I understand that, but
hey, Junior, could you come in here? I just have a printout I want to go over with you.
But that's also it's a tough thing to do. Hey, confront. I had daughters, and it seems like more of a boy thing these days. But I also wouldn't care and don't think about my daughters. Okay, well let's listen. Let's move on to.
Okay, so you were at epictimes.com. That's certainly okay, and you were on Breitbart, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then what's stepmom's gagging? What's that? Would you like to? Can we discuss that, please? What is that about?
What's that
what
about?
Is that site about?
I want your stepmom to be in this conversation, by the way. So, Mike, I mean, what do you think? What is he a harbinger for? What does he change? What does this mean for next year's elections or anything else? This speaker,
I think I know they're talking about like, hey, he's a hard right guy. We can run against him. I feel like he doesn't have a strong enough brand yet. Like the Democrats are in this position of like, well, first we have to raise everybody's awareness of who this guy is, and then we can take him down. Whereas at least Kevin McCarthy was sort of a spineless, more known quantity. Like in the ineffective, cowardly leadership of Kevin McCarthy, I think you could highlight in advertisements. Whereas like, the advantage Mike Johnson seems to have is kind of the milquetoast. Who is this guy? And do the Democrats really need to like waste their time educate? We have enough time. We have a hard enough time educating people on the accomplishments of Joe Biden. Now we have to like educate them on who Mike Johnson is, and then be like, and this is why he's bad.
Well, I think so, for sure, because in my district, I got a Republican who we want to get rid of, and he voted for Mike Johnson. So to beat Mike Lawler, where I live, that's exactly what I think we should do.
No, I think, once again, I don't think that's, I think I didn't make myself clear. I think an ever increasingly large divide in this country over what people need to know and what people give a shit about to know. Like, I feel like we are the Speaker of the House. For Republicans, they had Nancy Pelosi for a long time, and she was a powerful leader, an effective leader. So her effectiveness helped their cause of making her notorious or making her infamous. Whereas Mike Johnson seems to be like, in the next year, is he really going to do anything that's going to make him, Trump is all, sadly, it's like if Trump isn't enough, that's what, like, if Trump is not enough and the complete shit show that the Republican-led House was and is, if those aren't enough to get people to go, yeah, we just have to vote Democrats in. Like if the message isn't out yet that Republicans don't want to govern and can't govern, Mr. Milquetoast porn watcher is not like the thing that's going to like get everybody going, oh, okay, now I see why we have to get involved. My fear right now, and I get that Biden's age, and I'm going to say something that I haven't said before. I'm starting to think, one of the things I've, in terms of accepting things, like I'm somebody who doesn't like to accept things if they're not right, and I'd rather be frustrated and keep banging my head against the wall.
If they're not morally right?
Or like Joe Biden should beat Donald Trump. Like that's just like, that's as objective a fucking truth as I can think of in politics in this country. Like he should. His record is better. He's a better person. Like he's not under indictment for a bunch of shit. He didn't try to overturn an election. It's insanity. Like the fact that we're even here. But I'm starting to think like, who was it, Rumsfeld, that said you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. I'm sure that's an older quote. I'm sure he didn't come up with it. But in terms of Biden, it's like, maybe you have to run the president for the country you have, not the country you want. And we have a lot of people who, the Republican Party is basically they have at most two factions. The Democratic Party seems like herding a bunch of stray cats, and maybe Biden isn't the guy to do it. And I think just like electing Trump over Hillary was more an indictment of the American people than it was Hillary Clinton. As much as people want to say, well, her campaigning was bad and she was that. No, you picked an unqualified piece of shit who only did the job worse than expected over an immensely qualified, experienced, intelligent woman. The indictment is on the American people, not Hillary Clinton, regardless of what she should have done in Wisconsin. She should have been able to, she should have been able to fucking sit home and not campaign.
Yeah. I agree. I agree that. Yes.
And Joe Biden, to me, his record and his character, I get that his age is a problem. I'm not going to deny that. He does seem older. He does seem, he doesn't come across well. His policies come across well to me. I think his stance on Israel, like it or not, seems to have been fairly principled and ignores the sort of growing clamor in his own base because he's doing what he thinks is actually right and trying to find a tough solution. But will that fucking matter if enough people are like, man, fuck Joe Biden, I'm giving Trump another chance, or I'm voting for Cornel West? Will it matter? At this point, I think we're at this juncture where maybe we have a country that needs to be given some sort of quasi-celebrity as president. And, maybe is that Gavin Newsom? Is it the Hollywood-looking, charismatic, tall man from California? Is it Gretchen Whitmer, like the hot chick from Fargo? I know she's not from Fargo, but she's
the governor of Michigan, you son of a bitch.
I'm saying Fargo because she just reminds that general folksiness. But it's like old man with wisdom who's a little slow but keeps making good decisions, or his administration keeps doing good things. Generally, it doesn't seem enough for this country.
I worry it isn't enough either. But
I wish he could have left on his own accord before, and I think. My theory on him is still a lot of Democrats and a lot of progressives never gave him even a victory lap on his real accomplishments. It's like, hey, we passed an infrastructure bill. AOC, will you support Joe Biden? Well, I'll have to see. You could have just, I think if he had been more robustly supported and could have gone off to a hero's retirement, maybe things would be different. But when your own progressive wing of your party is shitting on you nonstop for a lot of your term, even when you're accomplishing real things, your ego it's a natural thing for your ego to say, hey, I'm a successful president. Why do I have to be the one to give up the office?
I wonder why it is so difficult for him to simply not go out on top as one of the great one-term, if not the best one-term president ever, given how he turned the country around from COVID and from Trump and the absolute giant historic legislation he passed. Why not be like, I did it. I'm going to step aside and I'm going to let there be an open primary. He could have been seen as one of the all-time greats, I feel.
Yeah, and I do.
So could Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and there's obviously a long history of people. Dianne Feinstein, she could have stepped down a long time ago and not gone through the controversy that she did. And
JL Cauvin in stand-up comedy comes to mind. I don't think
that's a fair analog. It's too late for that, though, I think. Right?
I mean,
for somebody else to step up, I don't even know what that would look like. Dean Phillips just hired Jeff Weaver, Bernie Sanders' old campaign chief, so he should have the nomination locked up.
Well, I got to say, Dean Phillips, I saw him on Bill Maher.
I did too. I saw that too.
I thought he came across really well.
I thought he came across excellent, except for Maybe I certainly wouldn't agree with him on a couple things, but the fact that he's running, I felt like kept making him not come across as excellent.
Right. No, and that's the catch-22, because I found him to be obviously a sort of
eminently likable.
Very likable, very obviously youthful when compared to, Joe Biden, and didn't seem to be obviously antagonistic, but he seemed to just be the guy who was saying, hey, we're all saying it. I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
I still, though, can't believe that this country could go back to it's what a fool me once, the phrase, fool me twice, shame on me. That would be the ultimate, post Jim Crow. That would be America's most shame on me moment.
Yeah. I don't see it. Do you see it? I mean, it's a possibility, I guess, but I think that his convictions and the constant conversation around the trials and that we're going to hear in the analysis, I don't see that he got any new voters, and I don't give a flying fuck about the polls. I think they're pretty ridiculous to even think about. I think they're just driving media narratives, and I won't fall for it. What are your thoughts?
What I don't like, what I fear in this country is that we've replaced the pioneering individualism, the individualism that would make you go to 2,000 miles away and start a new community or a new, strike gold or something. We've replaced that genuine kind of individualism that we still treat as our national spirit with just, I don't like to be told what to do. Do you know what I mean? In other words, it's now a very selfish, rugged individual. It's a non-rugged individualism. It's a very
I feel like that's not new. I feel like that was the Republican ideology or kind of personality acutely in the 80s and before.
Oh, sure.
It was an anti-government, idea. And don't tell me what to do. I don't want to share. I'll win at all costs. That doesn't seem new.
No. But what I'm saying is, in the Democratic Party, that's the Republican aspect of it. But in the Democratic Party, it seems to be I'm just watching my TV. I'm not doing much. I'm ordering my DoorDash. I'm working from home. But I want to feel like I'm something. I still feel the worst thing you can be is a front runner in a Democratic primary, because people will just go, yeah, but if I vote for Hillary, then I'm not really doing anything because she's already going to win. How do I fuck this up and feel like I'm part of change, even if change is bad? And with Biden, it's just I think we've lost track of the fact that hey, we got through COVID. Hey, the economy's kind of doing well on most metrics. Inflation, the big boogeyman, has really come down. And people just don't. It's sort of like we're in permanent app mode, or we need that surge. We'd rather the surge of Trump making us go what? Than just hey, things are pretty good. Things aren't so bad. Things are pretty calm. And obviously in the world, they're not calm. And somehow, once again, Joe Biden gets stuck in the I'm fighting for democracy, right? We're down with that. Ukraine? Well, we used to be until you. Hey, we're Israel's friend, right? Well, maybe, and then he loses he's not hardcore enough, even though he gave great speeches in support. He's not core enough somehow for the Republicans, who, by the way, I love the fact that Republicans still, this is with patriotism and all that shit, that Republicans, faith, patriotism, all these things that the Republican Party should have been completely stripped of in terms of that being part of their brand. And with Israel, it's no, we stand with Israel stronger than Joe Biden. That's why we're making our aid package contingent on fucking over the IRS. Does that sound like an unflinching ally? One who puts their domestic agenda ahead of supporting a hardcore ally? And yet there will be conservative Jewish people and conservative Israeli people who go, yeah, I still like the party that, of Trump.
Yeah.
They're a better friend than Joe Biden, who's literally angering some of his own party to stand tall with an ally. It's very unwinnable, I think, being like a Democratic president right now, unless you have a sort of pop culture component. Not denigrating Obama. He couldn't help the fact that he was young, charismatic, and historic.
Right.
But I'm saying that if Obama was just a young, charismatic white guy, I think, or a middle-aged charismatic white guy, if he was Martin O'Malley and he became president in 2016, good art, like pretty jacked, but otherwise like kind of your run-of-the-mill white man politician, I think he would have gotten way more heat. Obama did have a sort of, you felt good being in the aura and being governed by a historical figure. Whereas Joe Biden looks like a historical figure from another century. Well, and you're like, this doesn't feel as cool.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I think we can act like it would be great if this wasn't necessary component, and maybe it's not, but it certainly doesn't hurt to be a good performer in interviews and at rallies and one-on-one as well. You are performing, and the idea, I hate politicians, it's so tiresome. They are brands. They are representative of you. They have to be careful with what they say and do, and that includes being careful about trying to be entertaining and interesting and charismatic and changing the way you talk the way I am right now.
Yeah, and I think he should get a second term. But I also am realistic at this point about the country he's governing, and I think he should have stepped down.
Yeah,
not stepped down, but said he wouldn't run again.
I agree. Yeah,
just because I think you think about campaigning, and Bill Maher made this point, which was good because Bill Maher, I think, for all the annoyances that he sometimes presents, on Biden, I think he's actually been pretty good in terms of saying, I think he should be president again.
That's because he hates young people.
But he also says, I don't think he can win.
No, I mean, Bill Maher has become a total asshole, but I still watch the show. I still watch the show, and he does make some good points, and he has a great monologue jokes, and I do like sometimes the panel. I mean, I do watch that show, and I do like, I disagree with him vehemently on so many things and thinks, he's a garbage person and other things, but
he's got a real weird hard-on still for wokeness, which it's like, can we move past? It's almost like, as both a comedian and a pundit, Bill, can you stop beating the dead horse of wokeness?
Has always hated Muslims, and he doesn't care much for women, and he really hates young people. But the point is,
Biden, I think he was just he made the point where I felt like he said, I think he should be president. I think he should get a second term. I think he can do the job. I don't think he can win the job. And meaning and he said, and I didn't even think of this, 2020, he did a lot of basement campaigning because of COVID, but it benefited him. He didn't have to be out there looking a little older and shuffling and giving long speeches. He
potentially making any mistakes.
Which is also kind of an indictment of how we pick presidents. And I think Nixon in 1960 would agree, because he was the first victim, I guess, of charisma over maybe a more substantive record, like him or dislike him. And I think with Biden, it was sort of like hey, look, we only picked a guy based on his record and his policies, and we got a pretty good first-term president, but we might not have gotten him if we had to see him going, hey, man, where are we?
Yeah, no, I think it is a good point. I think it is going to be exhausting to campaign, and the more he's out there, the more likely, like any politician, much less a guy his age, he is to make a mistake of any type of mistake. And by the way, I heard that we got to talk about the debates that Donald Trump doesn't show up at. He is not showing up at these debates, but he has already said that he will definitely debate Joe Biden. He wants to debate Joe Biden. And one thing I would point to, and I'd love to hear listeners' argument on this, is a Joe Biden versus Donald Trump debate is a debate that determines which one of these guys seems older or more cognitively declining. And I would argue that it will look like Joe Biden is, because Donald Trump will scream at him and yell at him and talk over him. And Joe Biden won't do that for two reasons or more. And he thinks that'll be a good strategy, but it'll have the effect of, that Trump always does. And I think people like the bully. And so I feel like that matchup would be ugly. Although, again, I'm not sure I see it ever happening.
Yeah, I think
because I think Vivek Ramaswamy is going to run away with it.
I mean, let me tell you something, a good segue to the debate.
Go ahead.
I'm one of the
I'm
few
joking
people
about that, but
vehemently defending Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, you're defending him.
Because let me be very clear. Nikki Haley is a bitch and her daughter's on OnlyFans. What I love about him, I think he seems like a reprehensible person. What I love about him is that he's basically just a fast talking, smarter Donald Trump. Like he is a quick, energetic, youthful Donald Trump in terms of he's trying to use Donald Trump's language and his aggressiveness and his provocative speaking style, but he's a much smarter, quicker person than Donald Trump. And yet everybody's like, oh, I think this is awful what he's doing. I'm like, you elected something more awful as president.
Yeah, that's a great point. Nikki Haley said he's scum for bringing up his...
You worked with scummier, Nikki.
Great point. I hadn't heard anybody make that point. Yeah.
And when I watch the debate, my mom will call me before and go, I'm going to sleep. I can't watch this shit. And I understand that.
Good for her.
I love it. I love GOP debates because you have Tim Scott, a possibly gay black Republican, just no charisma. It's like you want to say, what are you even doing out there, Tim?
Very unattractive in the face, I find.
Yes, very he looks like let's be gentle. He looks like he's storing nuts in his right.
His face. Yeah, he doesn't really have a neck. And go ahead though.
He has no charisma. Then you see Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley is going to be probably the number one Trump alternative right now. And I get it. She's already steering her kind of abortion talk to a mainstream, a general election tone.
Yeah, people are giving her a lot of credit for moderating her abortion policy to the states that don't want it, don't have to have it, and the states that do can.
Right. And
as opposed to codifying the right to women's reproductive health care into the Constitution for all people.
Right. And I think watching her get mad at Vivek Ramaswamy, I think Vivek Ramaswamy is exactly what everyone, including Chris Christie, who I know has been more outspoken, everyone on that stage deserves every ounce of Vivek Ramaswamy making their lives miserable because he is Trump 2.0, which is like a worse product in many ways than Trump 1.0. But a better product in some ways. And they're standing there like, oh, Vivek, oh, yeah, this guy. And you are all garbage. You're all scum. Like you are all at some point Trump sycophants, Trump enablers. And now you want to sort of like he's almost there as a reminder. And that's why I like him. Like, no, you have to. This is exactly what you have to put up with if you want the White House.
You created this guy and you get to take all of his hits.
You allowed Trump 1.0 to exist and to be a president. You all helped that or bolstered that. In DeSantis's case, you tried to become your own Trump 2.0 by using him. And Vivek is there to make your lives miserable so that you have to remember, oh, right, we did this. We actually did this to ourselves.
Yeah.
Without Trump, we don't have Vivek Ramaswamy running for president.
It's such a good point. It's such a good point that Nikki Haley was looking at Vivek Ramaswamy and saying,
and let's be real clear here. Let's be real clear. Ron DeSantis is a piece of shit, and I hope Florida falls into the ocean. And what we have to do is tell China to fuck off and nuke them if possible. And Nikki Haley, a man is talking. Shut your mouth. And I'm very happy to be here.
Well, but to be clear, you're making me think about this, and it's like she referred to him as scum because he mentioned that Nikki Haley's daughter was on TikTok, which is not a violation of her.
Right. He was making a point. Her daughter
is a grown adult woman married. By the way, I looked up the pictures to a black man, very handsome man, beautiful family. But so it's not like she was some little girl.
I don't like it.
She's a grown woman. But more importantly, she's saying you're scum because you're talking about my daughter when the man that she worked for destroyed so many people's children and so many other people and is the scummiest person in the world. And that's what you're saying. Like, this is.
Yeah, but as I'm learning, hypocrisy is like okay now. It doesn't seem like people really pay a price for flagrant hypocrisy.
But it doesn't hurt to remind people the framing of who and what we're talking about and who they signed up for and who they sold out to. And now they're acting or reacting with outrage about the behavior of this Trump hatched mini candidate who.
Right. It's to me. And I love I don't like Ramaswamy, but I like that he's there because I feel like that's what you get.
Yes.
You get this guy fucking up your chances.
No, I think it's great
with you because that's what you deserve. You deserve him. I hope he keeps meeting the polling threshold, which I think he is. I think he's probably, those inner three are him, DeSantis, and I'd love to see a debate now with Christie and Tim Scott gone. And just those three.
Oh, yeah. That'd be good.
Because, they'll try to tag team him and then he'll laugh it off.
Yep.
And just go, as you can see, these shills for corporate America and China are ganging up on me and it's a disgrace. But everybody, the American people can see, it's by the way, he's terrible, though. He's terrible.
One thing I hadn't heard much about, and I wanted to make a big deal of it. I'm no national security expert, much less special forces combat expert, but there is a serious suggestion being made, and I think Nikki Haley was one who said they would send special forces into Mexico to kill the cartels. And what I tweeted last night, and I think there's probably, sadly, it would be a good chance of this, is that if you sent Navy SEALs or any other special forces into Mexico, they wouldn't come back. This idea that we think that they're superheroes that are invincible, that can take on anyone, is not true. And the cartels are very bad with a lot of very bad weapons and know the territory. And I think that would be a bloodbath, not to mention a foreign policy and national security nightmare that they would never even follow through with. But I did want to comment on it because I'm not hearing much about it.
Well, I think maybe we should send the Expendables in.
Yeah, even the Expendables, though, I think would get their heads chopped off by some fucking Medellin guys.
I'm always, and I say this as a person of height or a heighted person, as we say in the community.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I sometimes will see like little Central American and Mexican fellows on the subway and stuff. And it'll dawn on me like, man, they are short people. And I wonder if it would be like Gulliver's Travels, except with R-rated violence. If I met up with a cartel, are they all is it like El Chapo, is the height of my girlfriend, but he's a ruthless.
I think the racism the racism that needs to be pointed out is that when you see someone who is small in stature, you assume the country of origin.
I just said Mexico or Central America.
Well, I mean, it's not like they have a flag on their backpack.
Right. That's why I'm saying Central America. But you can kind of gander at the general.
They look like they have a bit Inca more than Mayan blood in them, and so therefore I have designated.
Right, if the DoorDash guy seems more indigenous, then I assume.
I'd love for them to tie you down, and I would watch that, and I think you should put that out as a potential promo this month. Okay, well, here's what I want to ask you though about the Tuesday night's election results. I'm very involved locally, and we got shellacked. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but it wasn't because we didn't do everything right and work way harder than them and have way better candidates, and we still lost. And yet Democrats won all over the country. And I think that I don't know if you missed that or if you weren't thinking about it when you're talking about the excitement for Biden. I think that it matters that we're so well organized in so many places, as has been seen over and over and over. And we're turning people out to vote. We've got great candidates. And I think that Democrats are going to continue to win all over the country as a result of how extreme Republicans have gotten. And more importantly, given us credit, even though we failed pretty badly this cycle in my town, that we're working really hard and getting a lot done with our organizing. Thoughts?
Unfortunately, I just saw an article in the Times today that was basically like Kentuckians are like, stop taking credit for this win, Joe Biden. Like they're trying to separate, and I hate that narrative because then it makes, it will just add to this, like Joe Biden's the only thing they don't like about the Democratic Party. But I'd like to think that Biden will get a second term. I've just been, 2016 is one of those things where you go, no, you can no longer take for granted the obvious.
I get it.
And so I think the Republicans, by making abortion the issue. Trump, it's another thing that Trump exposed about the Republican Party, though, that these people, at least I can respect in a certain level the consistency of somebody who is like, I ran as pro-life. I am pro-life. I want pro-life legislation. I'm not backing down, even if it costs us elections. I know you can disagree with that, but there is a consistent path to being a pro-life person. A lot of these Republicans don't seem to have, it seems to be like, oh, we're losing elections. Well, in that case, I guess my overwhelming commitment to life is not as overwhelming as I thought. I'm sort of partially committed to having a job, and then the rest is commitment to life. And I still think Mike Pence was great in these debates for just at least the performative aspects of it, in terms of he was very prepared, very he presented himself as the sort of consistent pro-life candidate, thinking, I guess, that maybe he could carve out the segment of the Republican base that's still like abortion is number 1, 2, and 3 on their issues. But it's showing once again, just like Trump did, that it's like most of them are pro-life, kind of, unless I'm not willing to lose my job over it. I'm not that committed to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm committed, but what am I? One of these crazy martyrs in the Bible that loses their, and those guys. They didn't lose their jobs. They just lost their lives. But I would be losing my title as a senator or representative, which is an even bigger deal. No, and I wrote about this yesterday where I just thought it's interesting now. And this is another thing that Democrats don't get credit for. And I think Joe Biden should sort of run on this as well, where it's like, you can't scare people. You have to walk this fine line. But basically, it's like, hey, you took for granted, whether it was unions, whether it was abortion rights, you took for granted that those things could never be taken away. So you were happy to go to the polls and say, well, my abortion rights aren't going to get taken away. Like, who are we kidding? So I'm going to vote on taxes, and maybe I don't like immigrants, and I'm good on I'm good. I feel fundamentally safe in my home, in my body, in my community. Other communities, other people, those people, they might feel as safe. But that's not really my concern. I'm voting with my wallet. And then all of a sudden, you see this big swing, suburban white women, where it's like, oh, I can lose that. My daughter could lose that. Right. Oh, okay. Well, now that it's come for me, I have seen the light and realized I have to vote Democrats because you know what? I haven't been giving Democrats credit for these fundamental fucking things that they've been defending. We have taken it for granted that the Republicans would bark and talk about pro-life or other issues that really I didn't like, but really they weren't going to happen. Right. So I didn't have to give Democrats credit for holding the line on things that had been held so long that I took them for granted, that they just existed. Nobody was defending them. They just exist, like air, which also I take for granted, and water, which I take for granted, which maybe in 30 years I'll wake the fuck up and realize, oh, clean air and clean water. Turns out I can't take those for granted
Probably
either.
not. They probably won't.
Jeez. No. Maybe I should vote Democrat. Maybe the climate thing was a fucking thing because I had my nice lawn that I watered with way too much water and drove an SUV to my kid's soccer practice 1 mile away. Wow. Maybe, just fucking maybe, Democrats are on the right side of things that are so important that I don't even think about them. And now abortion and climate's going to be the next fucking thing, and it's going to be too late when all these suburban folks who think they're good people but are fucking selfish realize, oops, we did it again, Britney Spears, because we did it with abortion and we're doing it with climate, and it seems that maybe taxes and immigrants shouldn't be my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 issues.
Immigrants should be.
Yeah. But you know what I mean.
I don't think that
to the progressives.
I don't think that enlightenment comes to most ever. And I think part of that, we joke about that, was those who wouldn't get vaccinated and then died.
Yeah. Donald Trump grabbed pussies, not a deal breaker.
Right.
Donald Trump's policies come for your pussy, deal breaker. And maybe you should worry about other people's pussies as well. before you just, it shouldn't have to be him shutting your legs or grabbing your pussy before you go, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't the right guy. Maybe taxes aren't worth the loss of rights, bodily autonomy, and the planet. Maybe, just maybe it's not. And
the eloquent feminist JL Cauvin.
Well, can I tell you something honestly? And I've thought about this in terms of my brand, if you will. I think, and I don't know where there's a space for me in whether it's the comedy world, the political commentary or tater world, or otherwise, but I choose to be the left of center person who speaks like a blunt right winger.
No, I actually absolutely like it. And I don't think anybody is turned off by that, because the way that I think I know what you're doing there. And I also, the thing for me might be, by the way, is that I know you so well that I know your intentions and I know your character and I see what you do for people. So like your actions matter more than your words. And when you're talking like that, I think you're doing it to be actually eloquent and to make a point. It's always shocking to hear a man say pussy, but when you're using it the way that you're using it, I think it's perfectly adequate to make the point to the people who are not understanding this. Right. You know, I mean, and by the way, you only said pussy because that's what Trump said.
Yeah. Like I'll use it. Like it's because I see this in society and I see this in comedy, and it's unfortunate that's like, sometimes you see on the left hey, you know, don't sit, like the form is more important than the function, where it's like, hey, you know, like I did a joke about two homeless guys fighting outside the venue where I was performing in Salt Lake City. And I said, I can call them homeless when they're doing felonies, right? Like at that point, it's okay to not say unhoused, because technically if they continue this felonious activity, they're both going to be housed tonight and possibly for an extended amount of time. So I'm calling them homeless. In fact, I'm calling it a bum fight, because when I see two homeless people violently attacking each other, I go, at this point, unhoused, not that necessary, not really the point. And I feel like sometimes we get very caught up in, and it's the same way when I have, you know, I've had this happen where if an old person says Oriental, there's two ways to respond to that. If you know the person, are they racist against Asians, or are they just using a word from the past? Sure. And if you know the difference, then it's hey, we don't say that anymore. Okay, you can gently let them know, but it's not shocking the conscience.
I fully agree with you, and I think I almost agree with you entirely on this, I'm sure.
But you give an opening to the right sometimes when you over police or over concern yourself with language versus results and worth intent and over.
I'm still to the right of some people on the idea of people doing voices. Like I think it's a case by case basis, but if you're doing an impression of how someone sounded and you're nailing it, it's not insulting. But the point. By the way, I do have Cornell. I just got my, and this is real, but also a joke. I just got my Cornell West wig, goatee, and T-shirt. Oh, great. I'm going to be doing some Cornell West videos. This is going to be great. This should get you canceled.
With voices, I also wrote a sketch that's called Black Voiceovers, which is about two white casting agents who are auditioning black actors for voice characters, and they're not nailing it as black as they want it. And so the white directors at the end begin screaming at the black actors to act more black, and to, you know, the other guy did it better that we had to fire. So could you just stop acting so Jackie Robinson and start sounding like a guy from the streets, for Christ's sake?
That is such that actually happens in auditions.
I'm sure it does. So I just thought it'd be funny, you know, to highlight in a little
the way they try to tell black people to sound more black in auditions. I've seen a lot of comedians and cultural commentators just talk about the kind of language. Could you just, you know, maybe if you sound a little younger, maybe a little bit more urban, like maybe if you're in a gang or you were a hip hop artist of some sort. My dad has the best line about the kind of political correctness of, listen, I don't want to offend anybody, but I didn't get the update. So I think I corrected him when he said Oriental. I go, Dad, maybe Oriental, not a word anymore. He goes, son, just keep me updated on the list, and as long as you don't take the word asshole from me, I'm good.
And and my mom has the same. Like, my mom was asking why does black have to be capitalized now?
Oh, is it always is that right?
Now it is.
Oh,
because and my brother, the erudite New York Times editor,
that's right.
He could explain it very clearly, and she just kind of went, all right, and rolled her eyes. But like, no, and it's one of those things that yes, to some person it'd be like, wow, you're rolling your eyes, and it's like she's 79, she's beaten cancer twice. She asked the question, she didn't demean it. But she's also like, I don't know, did me writing black lower? We all did it, right? Like we all wrote black lowercase before, just like we write white lowercase. But, I just think sometimes we are.
Sure.
We're fighting things that aren't battles. Like you can have a discussion, but sometimes we on the left, we seem to fight for things that are more like debate topics or something than full-blown fights. And it seems like this country is predisposed to consider. I did a bit from my special Tall Boy that's probably the most shared bit. I remember DL Hughley liked it on Instagram.
Oh,
but
wow.
It was basically about Democrats are like America's single mom. And we are like teenage boys that suck and are like, God, Mom, you suck. Like, leave me alone. Like, I just want to do this. And then Dad is the Republican Party, but he's a deadbeat. And he shows up like once every 4 years for some cool stuff. And he's like, hey, son, how'd you like to go to a game, shoot a gun and scream the N-word? And the son's like, hell yeah, that's why you suck, Mom. And Mom's just like, I'm trying to give you health care and homeschool you. I don't know what to do, but I'm trying. And they're like, you're complaining too much. And there's this like, we are like the mom to a single mom to a teenage son, where you have to do everything. You get none of the credit. You're always at odds with the kid. And then the dad is just like, oh, Dad's so cool. And it's like, Dad sucks. Like, Dad isn't even here. Like, what do you mean, Dad? Like, this alpha male thought that the Republican Party represents to so many people is like so outside of reality. But it's like somehow that the Democrats are given all the burdens of passing legislation. Republicans don't even do the job.
No, all the burdens of governing, period.
All the burdens of governing. Oh, you have to educate. Joe Biden's not getting out there and
then Republicans
enough.
Literally go and hold up the check and get a picture of it that they didn't even vote for.
Right.
They voted against it. Yeah.
The analogy only gets stronger the more Joe Biden does and the less the Republicans do. It only gets stronger. And we keep feeding into it. Like, we need at this point, like in the movie about the kid who like hates his mom, but then realizes his dad's piece of shit. We need the kid to walk into a department store and see like, Trump fucking the kid's high school girlfriend for him to realize like, oh my God, my mom was right the whole time. This guy does suck.
Ladies and gentlemen, JL Cauvin. I chose to end it there because it was just the best edit out right there on a laugh. I hope you enjoyed that and appreciated it. Let JL know. Go get a Cameo and go check out his podcast. Rain on My Parade is really very good. If you like listening to him here, I think you'll really like him there. He has a great exchange with this guy who's producing the show and keeps him on the rails. It's great. Great stuff. Really highly recommend Rain on My Parade for your next podcast listening experience. Though, I got some good stuff coming up, so thank you very much for staying here with me and for sharing it with your friends and writing a review over on Spotify and iTunes. That is such a big deal. Please go take a few minutes to write a review. If you have never done that, that would be a great thing to put on your to-do list for the weekend. Write a review for Stand Up Podcast. That way you'll be spreading the joy further. All right. Jon Carroll taking us in and out, johncarroll.org. We love you. We missed you last night, but you're always with us, taking us out right now.
You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence, even if it ain't a very want you laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand